This experience is one that I've kept to myself for a very long time. And I've always wanted to put it out there, but I've always had this concern of people telling me that I was lying or was just making it up. I will say that I am not making this up at all. It may sound like a crazy story, but it is something that happened to myself and my cousin when we were much younger. I'm not much of an author, so if the story feels a bit stiff, I do apologize. I'll try my best to make this detailed and written well enough. But this is the story of the night that my cousin and I believe we ran into the Jersey Devil out in the Pine Barrens. As I've said, I was spending my time with my cousin back when I was about 20. While I was there, we had made plans to go on this camping trip as a way to wrap up our summer. As is only natural, when you're in that part of New Jersey, I had told him that I wanted to spend a few nights in the Pine Barrens, an area notorious for those urban legends about how creepy the woods can be. We were fully aware of all the stories about the Jersey Devil, but being that age, and with him having lived there, we all thought that it was just a joke, or a story to tell to kids to keep them out of the woods. When we got to our destination, a spot that was a bit secluded, far away from other places, and we settled in for the night. The first day was great. We did some hiking, cooked up our food over a small fire, and we turned in pretty early. The second day, we spent a lot of time out enjoying the weather, and we had broken out our case of beer, so that we could party a bit over the campfire. That was honestly the overall plan of the trip. I was 20, my cousin was 22, so we planned on going out into the woods to get drunk and have a good time. That night, we started drinking and sitting around the fire, and my cousin started telling me about his plans for college, how he had actually gotten a scholarship for whatever sport it was that he played, and in the middle of this sentence, we both paused and looked into the trees. The silence of the forest was broken by a weird sound, a high-pitched scream mixed in with a low growling sound. When we both heard it, I mentioned that it was probably just a wounded fox, that they make some really creepy noises, and it was most likely just that. My cousin laughed and said that it was creepy as hell, and then we heard it again. Except, this time, the higher-pitched tone was less prominent, and the growling was way louder. I then said that we should probably just go ahead and get to sleep. Part of me wanted to just ignore the sound and not think about it. My cousin agreed, and we got into the tents and went to sleep. After a bit, I did doze off, but I was woken up by that same sound again, probably around an hour or so later. I heard it, and my eyes shot open, like an instinctual reaction to the sound, like my body was telling me, hey, you need to wake up and be scared. I just stayed there on the sleeping bag for a few seconds, staring up at the ceiling of the tent, thinking about whether or not this thing was actually a threat, when I started hearing footsteps near the tents. I glanced over to where I thought they were coming from, and sure enough, there was something there. The steps were a bit heavy as this thing approached. I started to get hit with this heavy fear when I saw a hand-like appendage pressing against the fabric of the tent, almost like it was rubbing it, trying to figure out what it was. The thick fabric crinkled and folded slightly as this thing started pushing against the walls, and then the top. I just sat there thinking, it'll lose interest, right? It'll walk away. Thankfully, it did lose interest after a while, and it did start walking away. At that point, though, I had to know what the hell that was, and when I was satisfied that it was a good distance away, I unzipped my tent to see if I could find this creature. To my surprise, my cousin was already standing outside of his tent, pale as a ghost under the moonlight. It was at that point that I realized that this thing wasn't just a normal creature, nor was it something I was imagining. He had seen it very, clearly. I saw this thing too, but he saw it in much better detail. What I saw was a very tall beast-like thing covered in matted fur, and I swear that this thing had wings that were tucked in. My cousin added 2 details to this that makes me think this thing was the Jersey Devil. He said that it had glowing eyes that he saw as it walked away, and he claimed that it had legs with knees that shifted backwards, like a goat. I can't make that claim as I didn't see its eyes, nor could I really see its legs in detail, but this thing was not a normal animal. That much I am certain of. Unfortunately, it was the middle of the night, and we were both a bit tipsy, so driving away wasn't really a good idea. We both made a conscious decision to start our fire back up and just wait the night out, and then drive away when we were sobered up in the morning. When the sun came up, we got our stuff together and got the hell out of Dodge. To this day, I'm convinced that what we encountered that night was the infamous Jersey Devil. I can't explain what it was or why it chose to check out our little camp like it had, but I'm grateful that it didn't go any further, or decide that it wanted us, and not just to check our tents out. I know that nothing really happened to us, thankfully, but it was still a scary moment. That was the only time we ever camped out in the Pine Barrens, and I will never forget that thing, whether it was the Jersey Devil or not.